In this episode, we finally get to figure out what the dog doing as he duels against Manabu. Hey there, my name is Rex, episode 9 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Honestly, a surprisingly good episode. I mean, when the summary kind of first came out for this episode, when we had heard that Manabu was going to be dueling a dog, Bochi, I had no idea what to think. But things ended up turning out actually great. So in the next duel of this television arc, I guess that's kind of what we're in, or the TV show arc, Bochi asks Manya if he can duel Manabu for this round. And it seems like a weird request, but now, once things actually get started, once Manabu is standing up there, standing in front of Bochi and is about to duel him, things are kind of clicking as he recognizes Bochi, and after Bochi reveals himself to actually be an alien and transforms into this huge buff dog guy, their duel begins, and we get some of their backstory as well, and it's pretty interesting also. So they do know each other from their past, and Bochi, before being owned by Manya, before being her dog, was Manabu's dog, or at least was the dog that Manabu often visited as a stray dog. And what's interesting too, though, is that Bochi mentions the Sogetsu style and how Manabu is being trained in it. So that's kind of a big thing, because I think, especially, the whole question of, like, if the series is tied into sevens, if he's supposed to be, Gakuto's son or grandson or something, then wouldn't he be aware of the Sogetsu style, or at least use it, or something like that? So now we get a little backstory, or we get an acknowledgement of it, as he was being trained in it and was eventually sent off for a while to train in it. Bochi thought he was abandoned, and so he left, and then that's where Bochi ended up getting where he was. So I think that all of that kind of works pretty well, being tied into each other. But we also see it from Manabu's side, as when he sees that Bochi disappears, he thinks he was kidnapped by an alien, and thus he kind of stops pursuing the Sogetsu style, or walks away from it and joins MIK. So it's kind of neat too. We're getting some backstory from Manabu, and again, the whole thing of, like, I don't think anyone expected, like, actual Manabu backstory for this episode, and especially like a good connection between him and Bochi. But the duel's pretty neat. Bochi goes first, summons his dog monsters, and particularly, I think it was Udius who noticed this. He says, for a dog, he tribute summons really quickly, or something like that. But Bochi's entire deck focuses on the graveyard, using the graveyard, sending cards there and special summoning them back. So he summons a big old monster first, going on to Manabu's turn. He summons some of his monsters as well, and inflicts some damage again with, his cremation dog, I think it was. It's interesting too, one of the lower level monsters of Manabu's deck does happen to be a dog. Just neat little thing there. But he makes some plays, lowers his opponent's attack, attacks over them, and then back onto Bochi's turn. Bochi now makes the really big plays, summoning his true boss monster, which is another just big dog. And this one is pretty neat too, because I think it just special summons one of the dogs from the graveyard without any cost, and then the one that he summons lets him discard 2 or send 2 from his deck to the graveyard to summon another one from the graveyard. And so it has a really, really good comeback, and a strong monster, and like the whole deck has a good comeback. So then he attacks over all of Manabu's monsters. Manabu is able to hold on, and then onto his turn, now he's able to swing things back in his favor. Now we actually do get to see Manabu's ace monster. Of course, he dueled episode 2, so he didn't get to see his ace monster just yet, but now he summons it, Chemicalize Salamander, and it's this big, not necessarily a dragon, because it's like a salamander, right? But it's basically his big boss monster. Let's call it a dragon for now. But this one has an effect that it can lower his opponent's monster's attack points by 100 for every monster that's in the graveyard, which really happens to work out in this instance, because that's what Bochi's deck was basically all about, using the graveyard. And so he had just a bunch of monsters in the graveyard, and that was able to allow Manabu to attack over his monsters, win the duel. So I think the duel also was pretty neat and interesting. I think we did get like one little cutaway to like explain the graveyard, but again, in the context of this being an educational show that they're dueling in, in the episode, it fits. And it doesn't detract from the duel, really. It's basically just and at this point, anything that's explaining mechanics of the game is basically just at the same level of like your typical side characters commentating from the sidelines during a duel, right? That we get in any Yu-Gi-Oh series. So I think this duel was pretty good. And again, getting to see now Manabu's Moss Monster was pretty neat. But now things are kind of resolved, and we see that, yes, Bochi did resent Manabu at first, but after meeting Manya, everything changed. He, wanted to basically be her bodyguard, but also kind of gave up his whole thing. What's interesting too also is that Bochi's an alien, so all the aliens that he is from, what is it, like the Bow Wow cluster or something like that, they all turn into small dogs to get on people's good side, and then they turn into their buff dogs when they're not looking and attack. It's so dumb, but it's interesting too, especially that, that was like a whole thing of that. Bochi also stuck with this style of fighting, and that he also gave it up. Originally, only wanted to get close to Manabu in order to take out the Sogetsu style, which apparently is now known across galaxies. But, the fact that he kind of gave all of that up, and also Manabu kind of, gave up his Sogetsu style training too, to be his own person. And, specifically he had joined MIK to hopefully find Bochi, but at the same time, him doing that still allowed him to meet Bochi again, because they're in this situation now. And so it's kind of neat too. And this whole duel, Bochi wasn't necessarily out for revenge or vengeance. He was mostly testing Manabu, and in a way of like they wanted to reunite. So I think that was like kind of a nice way to end that. I guess now we got like a big buff dog on the good guy's side, so that's kind of neat. What's funny too, again, I love that Udius actually does comment on the dog aliens, is that he's encountered one of them before being all cute and then attacking him. We haven't really got much of him saying anything about other aliens, I don't think, aside from his own Velgirian family or countrymen or friends, but hypothetically he should know more about various aliens, right? So hopefully, I think we kind of get to see more of that. But I think Udius is dueling next episode, as this one ends with, oh boy, Chupatara showing back up. And I've seen like discussion just about Chupatara, like, he's unlikable, he's not a cool guy, but I think that he works out as like the slimy little low tier villain of the group that just constantly shows up and gets beat or causes trouble, because if he had the personality he did and was like supposed to be a main character that we are supposed to like, would not work at all. But him basically being a villain the whole time, his personality works. But overall, that's basically the episode. Randomly at the very beginning, there's a commercial break, and we get a shout out, I guess, to Araya of all things, which also ties back into the washing things, that like the washing machine that Udius was they saw an advertisement or something like that. I mean, it's a comedy bit, but just the fact that of all things we get a shout out to Araya, like the soap company being called the Arai Company or something like that. I guess, but weirdly enough, big episode for lore and character building of Manabu, so I think that was great in that sense. Like I did not expect this episode to be as good as it was or work out the way it did, but definitely I enjoyed it. Surprisingly, I like this episode. Bochi is just hilarious, a little cute dog face on this giant thing, kind of like an inversion of, I guess, Yoshio from the previous series. But I think this works out better because the dog face is actually cute. But let me know what you think in the comments below about this episode, and if you enjoyed this video as well as the rest of the reviews here on the channel, let me know that as well, and leave a like to show your support. But anyway, this has been Rex. Have a nice day.